Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slash Film Daily. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I am an editor at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
All right, Brad, I said we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news, but because I was gone for a week, it's actually been a little while since we've done a news episode.
The oldest movie in TV news.
Yeah, I'm going to try to just keep it to maybe the top line stuff that's happened over the past several weeks. But unfortunately, that means we need to start the show with a couple of obits. Maggie Smith and Chris Christopherson both passed away. We wrote like a full obituary for Maggie Smith. Chris Christopherson, we have several articles about him on the site that you can read. I was just curious if you had any remembrances or favorite roles of these folks. I'll just say real quick that Chris Christopherson, if you've never seen Martin Scorsese's Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which I just caught up with within the past year or two, he was really, really great in that. And obviously, like, people our age know him from like the Blade movies and stuff that we grew up with like that. But yeah, he was great in that. But
yeah, that's a good movie, and that's very unlike like a lot of Martin Scorsese's other movies too. So if you haven't seen it, that's one of his earlier movies, and it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I was just reminded of about Chris Christopherson, just to give you an idea of like how good of a dude he was. Very famously, Sinead O'Connor tore up a picture of the Pope during a live musical performance on Saturday Night Live. It was like a huge controversial thing, and it kind of ruined her career from that point on in a big way. And there was very shortly afterwards, she was performing at, I don't know if it was like a festival or a concert or something, and when she went to perform, she got a lot of boos from the audience, and Chris Christopherson, who was also there, apparently came out and kind of like talked to her and kind of like comforted her like during that time, because it was like such a shitty thing to happen. So yeah, good dude, Chris Christopherson.
Yeah, class act.
Maggie Smith, for me, and I know that this movie is not beloved because even Steven Spielberg himself kind of regards it as one of his worst movies, but I grew up loving Hook. It always has a special place in my heart. And Maggie Smith is so good as Lady Wendy in this movie. And the funny thing about this movie, too, is that they had to put a lot of old woman makeup on her to age her, because she was not that old at the time Hook was made. But it like tricked an entire generation of people into thinking that Maggie Smith has been like 80 for decades.
Myself included. Yeah, I did not realize that until, I don't know, probably 15 years after I saw Hook for the first time, where I was like, this woman looks exactly the same. What is going on here? So, yeah, she was great. And if you like murder mystery type of things, check out her work in Gosford Park and Murder by Death. Murder by Death is more of like a comedic parody type of thing, but it's still pretty funny, and she's great in it. So
and Sister Act too. She's wonderful in Sister Act, and Sister Act is like one of those kind of comedies they don't really make anymore, that have fallen by the wayside because they don't make mid-budget movies like that anymore. But she's wonderful as a very stern nun in those movies.
Excellent. Okay, so let's transition into some film and TV news. So television's greatest dad actor has been cast as Hal Jordan in DC's Green Lantern TV series. I think we may have mentioned on a previous episode of the podcast that Josh Brolin was in contention for a major role in the show called Lanterns, which is a new DC Universe series about the Green Lantern Corps that's been described as True Detective in space. And he was seemingly offered the role of Hal Jordan, which is the same character that Ryan Reynolds played in the 2011 Green Lantern movie. But it appears that Josh Brolin has passed on that part, and now Kyle Chandler, who you might know from Friday Night Lights or Godzilla vs. Kong or Wolf of Wall Street or any number of things, will be suiting up in this role instead. And I guess before I go any further, Brad, do you have any reaction to that news?
I mean, it sounds cool because I can easily see Kyle Chandler as like a hard-boiled detective. And he's also got a very distinct like superhero jawline as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can easily see him fitting into that Green Lantern / detective role and having it be a lot of fun. And like, I feel like he's an actor who really hasn't like gotten his like, other than Friday Night Lights, since then, he hasn't gotten like a big career defining role in a while. And so I hope that maybe this is something that can like really like turn the tide for him.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that apparently he does not have a movie component to his deal, which is kind of fascinating because James Gunn and Peter Safran, who are the co-heads of DC Studios, have said that these new DC Universe projects are going to have the same actors playing the same roles across live action and animation and video games. So presumably that connection would extend to both live action TV and live action movies as well. So I wonder if that means that they're planning to kill off the Hal Jordan character in the show, because then they wouldn't need a movie component to this deal. Or maybe if like Kyle Chandler's agent is just kind of playing hardball and might be able to negotiate for more money down the line if the show is a big hit or something. But
Yeah, because I imagine it would be silly to try and negotiate that right now when you don't know like where he's going to be by the time a Green Lantern movie or a movie that would feature his character comes together. You know, like if it's at least like 3 years out, because they haven't even said there's a Green Lantern movie in the works in the first installment of James Gunn's new DC era. So it's like, why would they lock themselves into a deal when they could easily get a better one if he gets bigger as time goes on?
Yeah. There's also supposed to be like a Lethal Weapon Riggs and Murtaugh dynamic between the Hal Jordan character, the Kyle Chandler character, the one he's going to be playing, and then also the character of Jon Stewart, which is this black character from the comics who the show has not officially cast yet. And the Hal Jordan character is supposed to be this sort of like grizzled older veteran, and Jon Stewart is going to be more of like an up and coming younger type of character. And last I heard, the rumors going around were that Aaron Pierre, who recently starred in Rebel Ridge, and Stephen James, who was in If Beale Street Could Talk, were the two contenders for that part. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the coming days. I want to keep it in the world of DC for a little bit, because there are a couple other stories that have come out recently that I thought might be worth a quick discussion here. So one of them is that James Gunn announced that there's a new animated movie coming to theaters called Dynamic Duo that stars two Robins from Batman comics, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Those characters are going to be, I guess, the center of this story. And a really, really interesting company is going to be doing the animation. I'd never heard of them before, but they're called Swaybox. And they use a cross between CG, live action, real-time performance, and also practical elements of stop motion. And we've embedded a reel from them in our article, and I'll link to that in the show notes. I encourage you to take a look, because this is shaping up to be a really, really fascinating visual approach to a DC movie. What do you think about the idea of a movie centered on two Robins that is like an animated thing, but still presumably a part of this DC universe continuity? I don't think they've specified that yet, but what do you make of that, Brad?
At the very least, it's one of the more original things we've seen come out of any sort of DC project in a long time. So that, combined with the unique animation style, means it might be something worth paying attention to. And knowing James Gunn's, more unique cinematic sensibilities, I think if you take all those things and put them in a blender, then there might be something cool here. Because if there's a character who really hasn't gotten like a proper big screen presence from DC, who is such a signature part of the comics, it's Robin. I mean, you have Chris O'Donnell as Robin, and then you have the version from the classic Batman '66 series, but otherwise, the Robin in the Zack Snyderverse was already dead, and so we haven't gotten anything significant with that character other than in animation on television. So yeah, I think this could be pretty cool.
Yeah, closest we've come, I think, is Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Dark Knight Rises, which is just like barely anything.
Yeah.
Matt Aldrich, who is one of the writers of Pixar's Coco, is going to be writing the script on this, and Matt Reeves, who obviously did the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, is going to be producing. So they did say that this will not be in continuity with the Penguin or the Batman. So it's just unclear whether or not it's going to be...
if this is supposed to be a theatrical movie, or if this is like supposed to be something that's like streaming, similar to like the other animated DC movies that have been coming out over the years.
Gunn specifically said it's coming to theaters. So that's, very unusual for an animated movie like that. Obviously, DC has had a ton of animated stuff go sort of direct to video over the past, 20 years at this point. But yeah, this one's supposed to be coming to theaters, so we'll see how that goes. You can read more about those two Robin characters in the article that I'll link to in the show notes. All right, last DC story. Matthew Orton, one of the writers of the upcoming movie Captain America: Brave New World, is writing a film for DC Studios that's going to center on two villains. Bane, who was famously played by Tom Hardy in The Dark Knight Rises, and Deathstroke, who was very, very briefly played by Joe Manganiello in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Both of them are chemically enhanced super soldiers who are pretty strong and very intelligent. You can read more about them in the article that we have here. But what do you think about these two teaming up or facing off. It's kind of unclear what their dynamic is going to be in this movie.
So this is the kind of stuff that that makes me skeptical of like what this universe is going to like be in general. Like I'm glad that James Gunn is doing some weirder and more unique things with the DC Comics characters, but this just feels like a strange combination because again, we got Tom Hardy's Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. We haven't gotten a proper big screen version of Deathstroke. So like there's room there to like do something interesting, but like is anyone like really going to be excited to just see two villains like together in a movie when they're not established anywhere else yet? I don't know. This is one that I'm skeptical about.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I think it was Devin Meenan who wrote the article for us at Slash Film, and he pointed to uh, Gail Simone's comic called Secret Six, which I've not read, but that is a DC series that stars a group of 6 supervillains, and Bane and I guess Deathstroke might be a part of that. And he was speculating that maybe this movie could be that kind of thing. Oh no, I'm sorry. He says Deadshot is a part of that, which is the character that Will Smith played in the original Suicide Squad movie, and he was speculating that maybe Deathstroke will fill in for that role. Sort of similar to the way that like Marvel Comics adapts things, but really kind of plays fast and loose with the specifics and just kind of uses the framework of some of those comic stories. So maybe that could happen. And Gail Simone is like a beloved comics writer, and evidently her sensibility is a little similar to James Gunn's. So like maybe there could be something there, but that's just pure speculation. So yeah, I mean, like on paper, I'm kind of right there with you. Like, what the hell is this? And like, why would you be, I guess, introducing these two villains in this way where they start out with like a side story or something before being really woven into the tapestry of what this DC universe is going to be? I don't know. Lots of questions.
It feels weird.
Okay, I think let's take a break and then we'll come back and talk about some more film and TV news. All right, a couple things I just want to mention really quick before we dig a little bit deeper into some of these other stories. Daniel Day-Lewis is coming back to acting. He apparently retired after Phantom Thread. I think he all but said he was done with acting. Phantom Thread came out in 2017, so it's been quite a while since we've seen him in a new movie. And there were some set photos that came out of him and Sean Bean on a movie set together, and everybody's like, what? Is he back? What's going on? And Focus Features, that same day that those set photos were going around, confirmed that he's going to be coming out of retirement to star in a new movie called Anemone, which is co-written by Daniel Day-Lewis and his son, Ronan Day-Lewis. And Ronan is a painter and a visual artist who's going to be making his feature directorial debut with this movie. And Sean Bean co-stars. Samantha Morton is in this as well, a couple other folks. And the movie is going to be it's going to explore the intricate relationships between fathers, sons, and brothers, and the dynamics of familial bonds. So, yeah, just interesting that Daniel Day-Lewis is coming back out of retirement to team up with his son to make a movie. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Brad, or if we should just move on.
I just think it's a shame that Daniel Day-Lewis retired because he, is such a fascinating actor to watch, and I would watch, him in almost anything. So
yeah,
maybe this will light a fire under him and get him back, onto the screen after this. But he just does what he wants, good for him.
Did you happen to see the trailer for Clint Eastwood's new movie Juror Number 2 by any chance?
Yeah, I did.
I thought this trailer looked kind of rad. What did you think about it?
Yeah, honestly, it gave me like Trap vibes. Like it's such a well edited trailer, and like it really sets up an interesting story without giving too much away. And it kind of has that interesting twist at the end that it's like, oh, what? How's he gonna get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't feel like a Clint Eastwood movie either. At least not the kind of Clint Eastwood movie that he's been making for the past, I don't know, 15 years or so.
Yeah.
So I'm really intrigued by that, and yeah, the cast is fantastic here. It's a really intriguing story. So yeah, count me in. I think it's probably the first Clint Eastwood movie I've been excited for a long time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Nicholas Hoult is in this, Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons, a bunch of people. It looks like the cast is awesome, and the premise is really intriguing, and it's a great, great trailer. So if you've not seen that yet, check it out. I'll link to that in the show notes. So, Brad, Michael Bay and Will Smith are looking to reunite for the first time as director and star since 2003's Bad Boys 2. They're going to be working on a movie that is called Fast and Loose that was originally meant to be directed by David Leitch, who I guess left the project to make The Fall Guy, which I think you and I both really enjoyed, right?
Yes,
Am I remembering that correctly? Okay,
that's
good.
true.
Yes. So the premise of this is a criminal wakes up after being left for dead and discovers that he has no memory at all. He follows clues to uncover his identity and learns that he has basically lived two lives, one as a successful crime kingpin and the other as an undercover CIA agent. And the problem is he can't remember which one is his real persona and which one he just actually wants to live in. So what do you think about that? Just premise and Michael Bay and Will Smith reunion.
That's a very cool high concept premise. I think the prospect of Michael Bay and Will Smith teaming up is an interesting one, although it seems like when both of them have worked with Netflix, it's kind of taken the wind out of their sails a little bit. The movies that Michael Bay has done for Netflix have left a lot to be desired. Same with Will Smith. And so I don't know. Part of me is worried that like Netflix is going to give a little too much, carte blanche for them to just do whatever they want to, and like that's not going to result in the best possible movie. But I don't know. Maybe just them getting back together will give us the juice that we want.
Yeah, that's the catch with this movie is that it's going straight to Netflix, which is kind of a bummer for action movie junkies who maybe wanted to see that kind of bombastic Michael Bay style back on the big screen again. I'm quietly a Six Underground defender, so I don't remember. Did you ever see that movie, the Michael Bay one?
I did, and I like the sequence with the magnet stuff, and
Okay,
that's about it.
okay, all right, fair enough. I think that movie came out in 2020, and there was just something, I don't know, maybe about my headspace in that particular time where I was like, you know what, I'm down with this. So I have not revisited it or anything like that, but I remember it being like a quiet defender of it at the time. So the idea of a Michael Bay movie on a streaming service is not my favorite thing, but it's also maybe not the worst thing ever. So I'm curious how this plays out and whether it's going to have any cultural footprint or whether it will just disappear into the algorithm, even with big names like Michael Bay and Will Smith. But what do you think about the Bad Boys movies in general? Have we talked about those? Like, what do you think about what Michael Bay brings out of Will Smith as a performer, if anything?
Oh, I mean, he makes him like have so much fun. It's the version of Will Smith you like to see in blockbusters like that. The first Bad Boys is great. The second Bad Boys is even better. And yeah, I loved when they were doing those movies, and it would be great if they could capture that kind of energy again. But I don't know. It's a tough nut to crack, I think, for Michael Bay to deliver a movie that doesn't feel like it's too unnecessarily complex. And I don't know. I feel like Will Smith has really struggled to capture like the same energy and like success he had, back in the 90s into the early 2000s. And
Yeah.
but maybe it's still there somewhere.
There was something about him back then just kind of felt effortless, like he was just
Yeah.
so cool and there was just such a like breeziness to his performances. And I wonder if he's like since things like Ali and maybe when he's kind of like gone a little bit more serious, I'm thinking of like The Pursuit of Happiness or like 7 Pounds and those movies where he kind of like seemingly wanted to be taken a little bit more seriously by the world. If he kind of crossed a threshold where he can't get back to that breeziness that he kind of started his career out with, or maybe, I don't know, maybe that might be like an unfair assessment. That might just be like the difference between a young up and coming, hot movie star and somebody who's been in the industry for a long time. I don't know. But
I genuinely think his personal life took a toll on his public persona. An interesting left, not too long ago, I talked about Barry Sonnenfeld's new book, and he talks a lot about working with Will Smith on the Men in Black movies. And during Men in Black 2, he noticed that Will Smith was suddenly not really himself anymore. Just kind of didn't have that same energy, and it seemed like he had something on his mind, and he just kind of it wasn't that he was phoning it in. It just he wasn't like fully like giving himself to the project. And that was exactly around the time that, as we found out later from Will Smith's memoir and stuff like that when he started having marriage problems with Jada Pinkett Smith. And so I wonder if like kind of like since then, and because of that, if that's something to just kind of shook him and still bothers him, and he just hasn't been the same since.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, last story that we wanted to talk about today is a beloved Nicktoon is getting a live action movie, and there's no way this isn't nightmare fuel. That's the name of the headline that we have. Rugrats, the Nickelodeon cartoon series from the 90s, is getting the big screen treatment again. But unlike the Rugrats movie or Rugrats in Paris or Rugrats Go Wild, this will not be an animated movie, but a live action CG hybrid, Brad. And just on paper, that sounds kind of awful and horrifying. Do you agree?
Yes, because I'm curious what they mean by that. Like, are they going to put animated characters in live action environments? Or is it like when it's Alvin and the Chipmunks and the babies are like somewhat photorealistic, but also slightly cartoonish? Because one of the best things about Rugrats, and Rugrats is one of my favorite Nicktoons from growing up, is that animation style was so unique and like beautifully ugly. Like it was meant to look like a misfit cartoon, and so like you have these characters with misshapen heads and just weird features and stuff like that. And it was such a wonderful thing to have in an animated show at the time. And they've since tried to like redo Rugrats in the computer animated sense, where it has the exact same character design and influence from the original show, but it just loses something by not having that 2D animated look where it feels really like handmade, and so taking that and putting it into a live action CG hybrid environment just feels like it's not going to do well.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And then I saw the creative people behind this. Did you happen to notice who was responsible, who's going to be responsible for this movie?
I did not. So now I'm curious.
I'm very excited to tell you this because I think you're going to have a pretty strong reaction to this. So Jason Moore, who directed Pitch Perfect, is directing. So that's something.
Yeah.
But maybe more importantly for me, and I suspect for you, is that Mikey Day and Streeter Seidel wrote the screenplay.
Oh, shit. Okay, I am back in. Let's do this.
Tell people who those guys are for those who might not know.
So Mikey Day is a regular cast member on Saturday Night Live, and he's also one of the writers. And Streeter Seidel is one of the like main go-to writers on Saturday Night Live. He writes tons of sketches every episode. He's written some of the best stuff from over the years, and yeah, they're fantastic together. They've done amazing things on Saturday Night Live. So yeah, that's super exciting. So if they can get the visual style right, combined with like those filmmakers, then there could be something here, because I could see them doing something that has like a sense of self-awareness and like that's exciting.
Yeah, I think I want to say that those two guys co-wrote the David S. Pumpkins sketch, right? I'm pretty sure they were responsible for that, or at least partially responsible for that. Anyway, they've been longtime writers in the show and have churned out some of the best stuff on SNL for a long time. So Ryan Scott wrote the news article for this for us at Slash Film, and he said that Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, the 2022 movie, could be a potential comp for this in terms of like something that maybe sounds a little sketchy on paper, but has just a really, really fun, creative group of people behind it that could turn out to be kind of a best case scenario instead of like a, oh my God, this seems like a disaster in the making type of thing. So
yeah, and I'll confirm Streeter and Mikey Day did do David S. Pumpkins. And if you want to also very recent frame of reference for like the kind of great stuff they did, they wrote the Washington's Dream sketch that Nate Bargatze did on Saturday Night Live, which he just reprised when he hosted for a second time this past weekend as well. So yeah, they're just a great writing team. And so yeah, I hope they can do something cool. And if it is anything like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers with like a Nicktoon edge to it, then that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, because we both really liked that movie too. And just a Rugrats movie written by those guys, just such a bizarre thing to even contemplate.
I think we've talked about this in the podcast before. I don't understand how they haven't done some kind of like Nicktoons crossover thing the way that they did with like Chip and Dale by having a bunch of cartoon characters in it, something like that, featuring a variety of characters and like the live action world and all that stuff, because there's so many famous Nicktoons from the 90s to the mid 2000s that people love. I can't believe that's not a thing.
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy and Doug wandering around in the background, stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see it for sure. All right, I think that's going to do it for today's episode of the show. You can find more about all the stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com. I will link to all of them in the show notes. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Overcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at bpearson@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to take a minute to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That really helps us out a lot. Tell your friends about the show any way you can. If you have anybody in your life who grew up watching Rugrats, maybe send this to them as a text or something like that. And anything you could do, that'd be great. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you.